team.
Yep. Joining us on the show today is Charles Boehm. He is a freelance editor for MLSsoccer.com and the editor-in-chief of SoccerWire.com. Charles, how are you today? And thank you for joining us on the show.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You're on your way to Chicago right now, right?
Yeah. I apologize to the listeners for all the background noise. It's a breezy day in D.C., and I'm catching a ride to National Airport to hop on a flight to Chicago.
You excited for the All-Star game in Chicago this year?
Say that again?
You excited for the All-Star game in Chicago this year?
So I'm going to be doing some work for the league website primarily, and I don't go to every All-Star game, but when I can get to them, they're a fun experience. Even though I personally don't read too much into this one, and I recognize that it gets overly hyped for a number of reasons, but it's a fun experience.
Do you think, this is Steven, by the way, do you think Real Madrid's going to have an extra motivation for the All-Stars, or is it just kind of a, preseason game that they're kind of forced to go, these players that, are playing in it?
I hate to sound too cynical here, but I think typically the teams that come from abroad for this game, there's a lot of professionalism and professional pride that goes into it. That these are professionals at the top of their field. This is the 1% of the 1% of this sport, so they don't like to lose as a matter of being. But I don't really think that they pay all that much attention to all the pomp and circumstance around it. For them, preseason is preseason. And that's a pretty universal experience across the game. Preseason is a time of a lot of work, a lot of fitness, a lot of compressed preparation for a season, and trying to get downtime. I know most of the teams really like doing preseason in the U.S. because there's a lot more stuff to do when they're not training or preparing. And so from that regard, I think that Madrid will have fun, and some of them might get a chance to do their various commercial activations or maybe help their personal brands. But for them, it's work, and they won't want to lose to a bunch of MLS guys no matter what uniforms they're wearing, but they're not going to be too concerned about it because it's part of a process for them.
Well, the All-Star game not really, but kind of represents the midpoint of the season. So it's kind of a good way to see who's been doing well, who's been doing poor. Who do you think's been the most surprising team this season?
There's no prize for originality on this one, but nobody expected. I think most people who follow this league closely would not have expected the Fire to be this good at this stage. Sure. They're supporter shield contenders right now. They've got a lot of juice on and off the field in terms of the way they play, the stars they have. Schweinsteiger, who signing I was very skeptical about, has so far proven us all wrong. So I think the Fire are the big surprise package right now by some margin.
Why do you think the Fire have been doing so well? Is it because of Sebastian and him, coming into the team, or the other players that have stepped up, or the way they just play? What do you think has contributed to Chicago's season as a whole?
Yeah, it's hard to say because there were several significant additions they made. Dax is a big element there. Nikolic is
he's been
living up to every. Yeah, this is a pure finisher who's been getting chances and finishing them, and he's on a pace to break the league's goal scoring record. And even having said that, he's wasted a lot of chances. He hasn't been entirely efficient. So and then the Akam saga, I think, which is sort of playing out in front of us right now, is a fascinating one. The Akam presence, David Akam out on the wings, has been a big element as well. I certainly hope they can keep hold of him, although I think we're going to have that may be a talking point over the next few days as to what happens with David Akam.
Yeah. I've been hearing that Chicago's kind of lowballing him a little bit, and he wants a little bit more money.
Well, there's money has a lot to do with these things, but recognition and pride and ego is certainly a factor too. And in this case, it seems as though Voinovich, the Fire coach, in the press selecting the team of All-Stars, his section of the roster that he wants to choose for the All-Star game, he probably was trying to be fair and left the comm off. And it seems like he's created problems for his club team by being maybe a little bit too objective and not picking the hometown kid. I had Akam as one of my biggest All-Star snubs, and certainly Akam seems to feel that way.
Oh, for sure.
And we'll see if it fuels his exit from Chicago soon.
So, as the Chicago Fire have been doing so well, what team has definitely been the biggest disappointment so far?
A couple contenders there. Maybe I have a local bias here, but as a DC-based journalist, I'm pretty shocked at just how bad the hometown team here in DC have been. DC United, I don't know if anybody expects them to make the run that they did last year and be one of the best. They're one of the best teams down the stretch, last season. And suddenly they're not only are they not a playoff team, they look like they may be the worst team in the league. And it's really been a shocking performance from them. And another one last night, really disappointing and really troubling as they get set to move to a new stadium.
Absolutely. For your top team, though, who do you think's your top team that's been performing really well? Is it Toronto, top of the East? I mean, especially with their big performance today, the 4-0 win over NYC.
Yeah, I mean, Toronto has faced a lot of challenges. I think that I don't know if they're head and shoulders above the league, because Chicago and New York City and maybe KC have a claim to this as well. But the challenges that TFC has faced, the schedule congestion. They've really handled it all very well. They've already won a trophy. They could win one or two more. There's a little bit of a sense of destiny about the team. They're very well coached. They're extremely talented. Obviously, we all know that a lot of money's been spent on that roster, but it's also a very well constructed roster with depth and quality in multiple positions. And I love what they do tactically as well. So I think TFC are kings of the hill, at least at this early stage.
Now, we've mentioned all the big boys, but one club we haven't mentioned is FC Dallas, the club that did the double last season. Now, we're based out here in Texas, so we know what FC Dallas is and what they're about, but from a Nationals perspective, FC Dallas doesn't seem to be talked about all that much, and why do you think that?
I mean, there's a few factors here. You have the simple reality that this is not a glamour team. They're in a big market. Let's not forget. I mean, the FW market is enormous, right, both in terms of soccer and media. But they don't spend big. They don't splash out. They don't fill up that stadium, sadly, on the regular, even though they should. So there's a lot of I guess competing narratives that steal the shine off of FCD. But people that are paying attention recognize the work that they put in. They built a machine, really. I mean, it's not just about this year or last year. This is a team that's been contending at a high level for some time, and I expect that to continue. They had a little bit of a hiccup this weekend, but when it comes down to the business end of the season and trophies on the line, FC Dallas is going to be in the mix.
Yeah, we had Walker Zimmerman on a week ago, and he explained to us that this season they're really going for the MLS Cup. Do you see that he's right on that? That they could potentially... I think Zimmerman's an interesting case because he's a guy who had a really untimely injury in that Houston game, and looked like he was right in the mix to get in both the league spotlight as well as the international picture within the U.S. national team. And really unfortunate for him. He's got to do a little bit of work to catch up, but great player and really key to what they try to do. Right, but do you think that Dallas could potentially win the MLS Cup? Are they one of the contenders along with NYCFC, Chicago, Toronto? Yeah,
there's no reason that they can't be. I mean, this is a team that's been built to contend for a championship, and I think that's going to be the case again. The main challenge for them is finding their top level at the right time in the season. We all know that the MLS system doesn't necessarily reward the best team over the full season. It rewards the best team at the end of the year.
The hottest team.
So I think, and Oscar Pereira, I think, recognizes that, and he's got to get that balance right.
Let's go back to the Gold Cup, the final that happened a week ago. What are your thoughts on the U.S.'s run to the final?
Yeah, so I wrote a little bit about this for USSoccerPlayers.com if anybody wants to go check it out. That ran on Friday. I think a lot of us are disappointed with the tournament as a whole, and that probably inevitably extends to the U.S. because they're just not. They weren't necessarily a dominating team. They didn't sort of really sort of entertain on their way to the title the way that the 2013 team did. But what can you say? You know, this is kind of how Bruce Arena's teams do it. They don't necessarily always wow you. They don't always play pretty, but they're usually right in the mix when it counts. And they beat everybody that was put in front of them. And Arena, I think, has got to be happy that he won a trophy while giving auditions to fringe players.
Who was your most impressive player that made his debut for the national team?
You know, I really like Kellen Rowe. I liked him before this tournament, and I thought he did plenty enough to show.
When they took him back, I was really upset. I was like, he's been a great performer for the team.
Yeah, I was disappointed in that as well. I did not agree with the decision to send him home, as well as the same decision about Dom Dwyer. I thought those guys both did a lot of what was asked and showed that they have a skill set that this team can use. But, you know, at some point somebody had to give way. You know, let's just hope that Arena saw a little bit of what those of us who like them saw, and they get called back in at some point in the fall or early next year.
And coming in up with the World Cup qualifiers, just not too far away, are you nervous about the national team in its direction under Bruce Arena?
It's hard to say. It's hard to really say that there's reason to be nervous because they're undefeated, you know, and they've checked every box that has been put in front of them that they've stated is important. That said, you know, the nature of the World Cup qualifying process is such that these next two games are enormous, and no matter what they've done up to now, they still got to get results in those games. Costa Rica game up in New Jersey, I believe. Right? I think that's the next one coming up in September. If you don't get 3 points there, things start to look a little bit wobbly. But history suggests that they're going to hold serve and do what's necessary there. So you certainly don't want to have to. I think they'll be able to be in a position to get a result against Honduras, but you don't want to go there needing 3 points because that just historically doesn't happen for the U.S. So. Again, you know, Bruce, it's not always complicated with him, but he's always prepared. His teams are able to take care of business, you know, at least play at a minimum percentage level, let's say, of their potential enough to continue through, and I think that's gonna happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's swing it back to the second half of the MLS season that's coming up. Expectations, and I mean, do you have a club that's, you know, on the bubble with the playoffs? Maybe Dom Dwyer and Orlando down there. What should we expect?
Well, yeah, I think Orlando is. Well, I honestly haven't been impressed by them this season in terms of. You know, they certainly have talent on that roster, even if Larin departs for Europe. But I don't get a sense of who they are. I don't know if they know what their identity is. They're not good with the ball. They're not good with possession on anywhere near a level that Jason Price's teams traditionally are. He's, you know, set them up mostly in that 4-4-2 diamond that we know so well from Real Salt Lake days, but it's not creating the same results in the same style. So I don't really know. I don't know if they're going to make it. I certainly think they can, but they're one of the sort of more dramatic, I think, stories to watch. A similar team on the west side is Vancouver, a team that's, you know, they just blew out Dallas in Dallas. Yeah, and you know, they're capable of those kind of performances, but then they've routinely turned in just absolutely awful displays against much less difficult teams. So again, a team that I think is not entirely sure of what it wants to be. I think they could do a lot more if they had more of the ball and had more of a value of possession. But you know, Carl Robinson's a smart guy, and he's going to do his best to set his team up to get into one of those Western playoff places. And who knows what happens when they get in there. So they're kind of a fun enigma to watch as well. And then of course the expansion teams. You know, eager to see how they finish out the stretch. I don't think maybe a little too late. Sorry for Minnesota to make a run, but Atlanta is right in the mix, and
yeah, we haven't talked about
enjoy watching them. Yeah, I mean, well, we could probably leave them alone because so many other people have been talking about it, right? They're the